The South African police are investigating a case of attempted murder after a case was opened by Outgoing Eskom CEO Ruyter, alleging that someone tried to poison him. Ruyter filed the case when he became ill after drinking cyanide-laced coffee at his Megawatt Park office in Sunninghill, Johannesburg. After tests were conducted, it was confirmed that Ruyter got cyanide poisoning and was subsequently treated by a doctor. Outgoing police spokesperson, Lieutenant Colonel Mavela Masondo, confirmed that a case of attempted murder was opened at Manus Police Station in the Western Cape. Ruyter's sudden resignation rocked South Africa in December at a time when South Africans are moving between Stage 5 and Stage 6 power cuts. There have been several calls for his resignation, with the Minister of Energy and Minerals, Grady Mentashe, accusing Eskom of actively agitating for the overthrow of the state. Now, Ruyter will officially be leaving office in March 2023. So joining me from South Africa is an energy expert, Sipho Kadima, and we will be looking at this and why anyone will be looking at how to take the life of a man who has actually resigned. Thank you so much, Sipho, for joining us.
Well, thank you very much, and greetings to the viewers of Business Edge on News Central.
Now, thank you so much. Now, investigations are ongoing to determine who and why anyone would want to murder Ruyter. What are the latest developments, and what would you say are the motives behind that attempted move?
Well, look, I think from the information that is in the public domain, it does not appear that there is actually a case of cyanide poisoning. Because if indeed it was a case of cyanide poisoning, I don't believe that Mr. Ruyter would have been alive to tell the story and even be able to open a case. It might be a poisoning of some sort, but I doubt that it was cyanide poisoning. However, now that the case has been opened, notwithstanding that is after some days from the alleged incident of poisoning having happened, that the police case has been opened, I doubt very much that they will actually witness anyone being successfully prosecuted criminally in an open court, because the alleged incident is reported to have happened at the offices of Eskom, and specifically within the office of the CEO, where he sits on a daily basis. Now, that is flabbergasting, to say the least, because I myself have been to the head office of Eskom. I've been to the office of the CEO on several occasions. The security there ordinarily is very, very tight and has been very high. So it's surprising that, notwithstanding so many days, with this incident having been reported to have or alleged to have happened in the office of the CEO, there are still no identifiable suspects that could have been alleged to have been responsible, but also that it does not appear that indeed this was a case of deliberate poisoning. As I say, that had it been a case of deliberate poisoning, taking into account how cyanide in terms of its toxicity is, I don't believe that Mr. Ruyter would have been alive to tell the tale. So I think there's a lot more to the story than what has been reported. And it comes at a time when Eskom is facing tremendous challenges, challenges that are in fact affecting the very functioning of the state of South Africa, because when Eskom fails, South Africa becomes a failed state.
Well, it's been reported that due to timely intervention, it was able to survive the onslaught, as it were, and it was determined that the case was as a result of cyanide poisoning. But then let's leave that aside and look at what some people are speculating, saying that this event may depict the fact that there's a battle between some people who are actually hoping and praying that South Africa would progress socio-economically, and those who are hell-bent on corruptly enriching themselves. Do you also belong to this class of speculation?
Well, look, what I do know as a matter of fact, with the objective facts having supported the assertions I'm about to make, is that indeed Eskom is being looted. and Eskom is being looted into bankruptcy, but the people who are responsible are the privateers. And none other than Mr. Andre de Ruyter himself stands to blame because he has presided over the looting of Eskom. And he has presided over the looting of Eskom by having failed and or refused to take decisions which would have only been in the interest of the company and not in the interest of the greedy profiteering privateers.
But then,
What
Shepo,
are those privateers?
what kind of
Privateers are the
Shepo, can you hear me? What kind of decisions were you expecting him to have taken during the course of his official handling of Eskom?
On the 20th of January 2018, I wrote an open ad where I stated that had I been appointed the chair of the board of Eskom, I would have taken 5 major decisions which would have saved Eskom from bankruptcy. When Mr. de Ruyter came on board in December, on Christmas Day in 2019, he was supposed to have taken those 5 major decisions I stated. The first decision that Mr. de Ruyter should have taken should have been to cancel, terminate all the coal supply agreements, which are what they call take or pay basis. Eskom pays for more than 20 million tons of coal a year, which it can never use under any circumstances. So you have got the coal mining companies, the private coal mining companies that are looting Eskom blind. Secondly, the second decision would have been to take the decision to terminate all the independent power producer contracts. Those independent power producer contracts cost Eskom no less than 52 billion rand every year, and they deliver absolutely zero electricity that Eskom can bill anyone for. Those contracts should have been terminated. What is absolutely astonishing is that the apartheid era nationalist party government knew full well that energy security can never be entrusted into the hands of privateers. Hence, they had a policy which stated that anything above 1,000 megawatts of electricity could never be entrusted to a neighbor or a privateer. Here we have Mr. de Ruyter having insisted that Eskom must sign more independent power producer contracts. When Eskom is an organ of statute, its primary responsibility is to produce electricity, transmit that electricity, and distribute it to the customers. Nothing more, nothing less. It can never be sustainable for anyone to hope to succeed as the CEO of Eskom, wanting to procure electricity from the privateers, more so when that electricity is not even deliverable. So that is the major decision that Andre de Ruyter should have taken. He failed in that regard. And also, he should have ensured that he brings back the maintenance of Eskom boilers in-house. Currently, is it outsourced? And the cost of maintenance, which is not reliable, is more than 21 billion rand a year. And yet, we're seeing Eskom plant and equipment continually breaking down, whereby the energy availability factor has, for the first time in the history of Eskom, dropped below 51%. Now, anything below 70% in terms of energy availability factor means bankruptcy. Hence, we have seen Eskom continually reliant on national treasury for various forms of bailouts. And this year, which will end at the financial year ending March 2023, we will see no less than 70 billion rand having to come up from national treasury to bail out Eskom, because Eskom, as we speak right now, for all practical purposes, it is no longer a going concern, because under Mr. Andre de Ruyter's tenure, this year we've already had more than 200 days of rolling blackouts, of load shedding. A stage 4 load shedding costs at least $10 million every single day in lost revenue. These are the decisions he should have taken, and he has failed in that regard.
Now, Shepo, are you saying that because of its indecisionings, that is why in some quarters it's been speculated, has been said as a school of thought that Eskom under its watch is deliberately attempting to sabotage the government, because he said that he had not gotten enough support from the political parties, as it were, and stakeholders for him to be able to do his job. And some reports have said that he actually embarked on anti-corruption crusades. So where do we draw the thin line between these allegations and what he actually did at the helm of affairs?
Look, there is no evidence whatsoever that Mr. Andre de Ruyter has been an anti-corruption crusader. And more so, as I say, he has presided on the very corrupt nature of contracts that are making Eskom bankrupt. So there is no evidence to that effect. But also, there is no evidence to substantiate the allegation that there is an attempt to sabotage or to actually bring down the collapse of the state of South Africa. What we have got objective facts and evidential material to us to sustain the assertion that we are making, that it is everything to do with rampant corruption, looting, because it is absolutely not sustainable for Eskom and under this leadership to have taken the decisions that they are taking, including the so-called Just Energy Transition Investment Plan, which we are told the government has forced Eskom to have to spend at least, or plan to spend at least 98 billion American dollars on the so-called Just Energy Transition, when none of that energy, which will purportedly be produced from the so-called renewable sources, is ever deliverable to any user in the country. So everything has to do with rampant corruption, with looting, and taking into account that all the major countries, whether it's the United States, whether it's Europe, whether it's Australia, whereby they have gone down this foolhardy route of saying you can replace fossil fuel power, nuclear power, with intermittent energy sources, so-called renewables. We know the costs have increased to the extent that now in Europe, they fear that in this winter season, at least 147,000 people are going to die from the extreme cold because they cannot afford electricity, they cannot afford heating, or they will have no access to heating. Therefore, that is the decision that we are taking, that already we have seen, having gone already, we've got 6,000 megawatts of the so-called renewable energy that has been put on the grid in South Africa. And the cost, the direct result, has been perpetual rolling blackouts, which have now exceeded 200 days in the last year.
All right,
That's
Shepo.
a direct result of having introduced those so-called renewable energy sources, and introducing even more will only mean that Eskom will no longer be a going concern, will go bankrupt, because the state government of South Africa no longer even has got the money to be able to bail out Eskom as they had been doing in the last few years.
All right, Shepo, you are an energy expert. What measures, because you have laid down hold of allegations now at the doorstep of Eskom, but then as an energy expert, what are those measures do you think governments should take or can take to deal with the crisis of load shedding and power cuts occasioned in South Africa as of now?
The government of South Africa, and through whichever ministry, they must stop the unlawful interference in the affairs of Eskom. Eskom is an organ of statute in terms of the Eskom Conversion Act of 2001. The mandate, the primary business activity of Eskom is laid down in that Eskom Conversion Act of 2001. No more, no less. And if anyone who runs Eskom and wants to succeed in that portfolio, and if they understand that they have got a fiduciary duty to act only in the best interest of Eskom, they will work according to the Eskom Conversion Act. So the government can't do much more than what already has been cast in legislation. However, we need to ensure that the next chief executive officer of Eskom must be subjected to a public interview process where they must be able to demonstrate to all, not just to the ANC-led government, not just to the ANC minister, but they must demonstrate to every single South African that they have got the skill, they have got the experience, they have got the knowledge, and they have got the fortitude to be able to come up with a practicable plan which can bring to an end once and for all the rolling blackouts within a period of 90 days. And that is certainly possible. And then they must also take the decisions that I've already mentioned as to termination of the various onerous contracts which are subject of actually rampant corruption and looting. If they terminate those contracts and stop the usage of diesel to generate power, we will see a Eskom that will save at least 80 billion rand a year. We will see a Eskom that will no longer need to go to the independent regulator, NERSA, to demand a tariff increase as high as 32%. And we will see a Eskom that can return to the basics, meaning take up the 15,000 megawatts of coal-fired power stations which they have shut down, bring them into service, but employing or rather retrofitting clean coal technologies which have got a higher efficiency and lower emissions effect. And that will ensure that South Africa can remain competitively and economically competitive in terms of being able to attract investment into the energy-intensive industries, because energy-intensive industries are labor-intensive. Those are the decisions that must be taken. Okay. Anyone who will ever assert that there is any other alternative other than what I have stated, I can assure you, as a matter of fact, South Africa will become a failed state and before the end of the year, because the grid of the country will soon collapse based on the objective facts and based on what is currently happening, where there is no end to load shedding walls.
Well, Shippo, we are hoping that there won't be a collapse in the fabrics, either in the economy or in the power sector or in any sector of South Africa's economy. But then we must appreciate you for joining us and for lending your voice to the discussion. Appreciate it.
Thank you. We remain prisoners of hope.
Thank you. Now, it has been speculated that the Reuters fight against corruption, which some, interestingly, consider a failure, even just as Shepo has said, and is poor management of Eskom and power cuts factors responsible for his alleged poisoning. But then, is that really necessary, having to take his life because of his adjudged failed administration over Eskom? Well, Pravin Gordhan, South Africa's Minister of Public Enterprises, has asserted that a thorough investigation would be conducted, promising that those responsible for the attempted murder would face charges. What is paramount on the minds of South Africans right now is to see that there is enough power available and affordable for their personal consumptions and for the running of their businesses, irrespective of what crisis that Eskom might be going through. And just as Seppo has said, that it is important to cross the T's, of course, and dot the I's in terms of the contracts and, of course, the modalities surrounding the contracts as regards Eskom, to be able to draw positives out from what Eskom operationalities should be, as it were.